people in South Africa who are farmers getting murdered.
Right. These people are facing in South Africa. I mean, the law there absolutely allows their property to be confiscated.
They're constant. They've been attacked, murdered, their land has been destroyed with no protection from the government.
In which Julius Malema is leading an enormous crowd in chanting, "Kill the Boer, the farmer," which is, in fact, the language of genocide.
They went through the apartheid system.
You know what stands out to me with this lady is that this lady has no clue what she's talking about. Let me just give you the tea of what some of the major conservative, maybe some liberals who are also centrist, who are sharing ideas about Afrikaners being in America. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start with none other than Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie Kirk, we know him from, TikTok, where he makes videos about, what is going on in the United States. He's the CEO of Turning Point USA and things like that. He says South African Boers face systemic legal discrimination in their country. They face horrifying violence based on their skin color. A political party in their homeland openly calls for their genocide. Now, we already spoke about the idea that, there might not be genocide per se, but bad things are happening in this country. We've already discussed them at length. Please check out our YouTube channel. He further says they have useful skills. They are very close to America culturally. America can integrate them with minimal difficulty, and they will immediately start adding to America's wealth rather than subtracting. They are, without exaggeration, ideal immigrants for this country. And he further says, and of course, that's exactly why the left despises them so much. They don't want refugees. They want the great replacement. They want people who have no skills, who just want American welfare. They want people who are culturally alien. They want human traffickers and MS-13 members. They want people who will commit crimes against Americans. Charlie Kirk. And of course, they've also been looking forward to the genocide of white people in South Africa. They've been waiting with bated breath for it to happen, so they would swoop in, nod their heads and say, well, this is what happens when you oppress people. This is the natural outcome of white supremacy. Charlie Kirk can see right through them. You know what I'm saying? Charlie Kirk understands the lefties in America, in Europe, and I'm also surprised he understands the ones in South Africa too, because this is just exactly what they will say, and they are saying exactly these things. Now, Charlie Kirk wraps it up by saying President Trump just denied the left their celebration and made America stronger in the process. They will never forgive him for it. And people really, they are out on the internet and they are angry. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to play for you this clip from CNN.
If you think about the history of South Africa, it being under an apartheid system, where I think it is 80% of the population that are Black Africans only own 4% of the land. That is because they were put in shanty towns and moved into areas where they had no rights. And so 30 plus years ago, they went through the apartheid system.
You know what stands out to me with this lady is that this lady has no clue what she's talking about. She has no clue what she's talking about, and she's gonna say it with a straight face, bro. This is some problem with Black Americans, They just be saying things they have no clue about. Her name is probably Shaquila. LaQuisha. LaQuisha, you don't know what you're talking about. Please stop. Please stop trying to meddle in African affairs that you haven't read anything about. You just saw a couple of videos online and you're just going to have an opinion there. CNN. This is what CNN does.
system ended, and they reformed their constitution under the great leader of Nelson Mandela, and that allowed for a racial reconciliation, one that this country has yet to do, but South Africa did it, and they reformed their constitution, and part of that.
If you think there's racial integration in South Africa and people, it's just vibes. It's just vibes in South Africa. Bro, LaQuisha. Get LaQuisha out of there, people.
Is that the people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaners actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans, and so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also. And so that...
What is she talking about? That the white people, the Afrikaners right now who live here in South Africa, colonized South Africans. What is she talking about, bro? What is she? And she says it with a straight face. She says it with so much conviction. Everybody's got to believe her. But this white guy doesn't buy it. So we're here for it, ladies and gentlemen. Hold it now. Don't finish your popcorn.
That is what they are saying is discrimination. Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks and balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to, so if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave that country.
They are. They're leaving.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Bro, Afrikaners have been in South Africa for over 400 years. This will be the same as white Americans saying, if you black Americans do not like what's happening in this country and you think we are racist, just pack up and leave because you've only been here for over 400 years. So just pack up and leave. She doesn't even have an idea of how racist that sounds.
To come
no,
these refugees are coming here.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Come to Africa, LaQuisha. Come to Africa. Come to Africa, LaQuisha. I promise you, you won't survive. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we made a video about some black American woman who was crying on the internet saying, you know, she was in Uganda, there's no water, there's no electricity, there's no nothing, there's no snacks. And she left. This woman wouldn't survive a month living in Africa, bro. She's gonna wanna be there on national television and, in fact, international television and virtue signal about something she has no clue about.
Germany.
Are you against them coming here?
Holland, probably.
Holland.
Are you against them coming here?
I'm against the hypocrisy of this administration.
No, that's not the question. The question is, are you against them coming here?
If there was actually a genocide happening, like there is in other places in Sudan, in the Congo, I'm not opposed for Congolese and for the Sudanese to come to Africa, just like I'm not opposed to Venezuelans and South Americans coming to America if they are fleeing and looking for asylum. What I am
just
against,
these 50 people you're against.
I am against, it's not about being against them. What I am against is that they are being given special treatment when there is not a genocide happening in South Africa, and they just don't like the law of the land.
Well,
so you know what they tell people?
Ladies and gentlemen, she's just speaking a lot of hogwash.
The discrimination that these people are facing in South Africa. I mean, the law there absolutely allows their property to be confiscated. They are subject to racial discrimination. Some have been subject to violence from some reports that I have read. I mean, we're talking about 50-something people, and the people who seem to be angriest about this today had no problem with 20 million coming here. Some of the worst people in the world coming here, including gang members and so on and so forth. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the folks who are outraged today after what happened to this country over the last several years. Over 50-something people who are clearly being discriminated against in South Africa. Well, the previous administration had priorities about who to let in.
Fire.
Including, you know, all kinds of folks who I would argue shouldn't be here. This administration, I guess, is going to set out who not to let in.
But let's just be honest about what those priorities are, right? And by the way, I'm a Democrat here. I did not defend the Biden administration on immigration.
But you voted for him.
So what it...
That doesn't mean that I
And you
defended him on
voted for a
immigration.
continuation of it in 2024, did you not?
Whoever this guy is, bro, I like him. What's his name? I think I saved it from his account.
I did not vote for his policies on immigration.
But you voted
Did you vote? Do you?
Okay, but you voted to
like
extend the immigration policies of the last administration.
No, I did not vote for that.
The point is, you're in a party that opened the borders, and I'm in a party that closed the borders, and I think the American people prefer our way.
Well, he's close.
Amazing stuff, man. Amazing stuff. Scott Jennings. Yeah, Scott Jennings. Amazing guy.
Some clips coming here may not make sense. They're referred to as Boers B-O-E-R-S.
Boa.
Boa. Boa. They're constantly.
No more boa.
They've been attacked, murdered, their land has been destroyed with no protection from the government. So I know some people are going to say, hasn't this been going on for a while? No, there have been murderous mobs who have faced no consequences from the government, but now it's codified into law where the government will be the murderous, tyrannical mob stealing your land.
And by the way, the guys, you can check me on this, but I think they're not allowed to own firearms as well to be able to protect themselves. I think that was one of the big kind of controversies.
No, that is not the case, really. It is actually very difficult to go through the process of owning a firearm in South Africa. Like, it is tedious, and even when you own a firearm, the government has a list of rules in terms of how you should engage somebody who's literally threatening your life. And if you happen to shoot fast, or you happen to shoot while they were running away or something like this, you might get in big trouble with the law. So the laws around owning a firearm and the usage of a firearm are very complicated in South Africa. They don't actually benefit the citizens of South Africa. So that is the actual problem we are facing.
There were, roaming groups of marauders killing white farmers indiscriminately, and they couldn't defend themselves.
An anti-gun law in Africa is funny to me.
It kind of is. It almost, an anti, like machete law may be the only thing that's funnier, but,
Well, here's what's not funny. We couldn't even, the CIA couldn't even help undergird or fund a coup. Because in Africa, you have a murderous tyrant like Ramaphosa, and then the primary opposition is a would-be murderous communist. So you either get a fascist racist tyrant, or you get a fascist racist communist. So Julius Malema, he's the leader of the primary opposition party there, the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, a Marxist party. They're not a ruling party, but they're incredibly influential. They have a lot of popular support. And so the alternative to the government...
And it's dwindling, it's dying away.
Policy of seizing land of white people, of erasing any history that involves white people in that country. The alternative to that is this Malema character, who I don't like very much the more I learn about him, who is routinely called for blatant violence against, specifically, white people.
Why not Mashaba? Why not Soli? And all of that? Because the mayor of DA in PE is a white man.
So much to tell who invented the beret.
When you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man.
Imagine.
Not because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
Now, I know what you're saying. Hey, that was taken out of context. So then here's another clip of Malema chanting. Remember, the Boer are white farmers. Kill the Boer.
Kill the Boer. The farmer. Kill the Boer.
Maybe he doesn't mean shoot.
Farmer.
Oh.
Is that the super?
My boy got the ad-libs in there, man. So of course he means shooting literally. There's ad-libs in there, man. Ain't that crazy?
Is that the Super Bowl?
Attention.
Defend that one.
Attention.
I think he does mean shoot.
Pull a Biden. I said bullseye, not target.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, that is crazy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I need to play you this clip by Ben Shapiro reacting to Julius Malema as well, man. And then I'm going to play you the video on top as well.
Fighters, they're communist black nationalists. People like Julius Malema. You've seen Julius Malema on X, particularly. He's the head of the EFF, which is a radical party in South Africa. And he is most famous. They're called the Economic Freedom Fighters. They're communist black nationalists. They're also, in 2018, by the way, I should point out that the head of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, allegedly said he wanted Malema back in his party. Malema used to be a member of the ANC. Here is a giant rally just a few years ago in which Julius Malema is leading an enormous crowd in chanting, "Kill the Boer, the farmer," which is, in fact, the language of genocide. If you're talking about just kill the Boers, that's no different than kill the blacks or kill the Jews. I mean, that is what it is. I mean, everyone who's attempting to read some sort of crypto message in there that somehow lets Julius Malema and the people who are chanting this off the hook substitute any other race for Boers and tell me that this isn't genocidal language. It just is.
I like that. I like the fact that he's not saying there's a genocide. He's not saying there's a genocide. He's saying the language being used is genocidal. So that is a very good way of looking at it.
The poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer.
He's holding his hands in the symbol of a gun. I mean, it's an entire stadium. Okay, so he seems like a delightful fellow, a bunch of communists who are shouting to kill the Boer, because never in the history of humanity have we ever seen communists attempt to exterminate an entire class of people. I mean, except for pretty much every communist regime everywhere. So yeah, you might see why South Africans who are white feel that they themselves are under threat.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, we've not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal...
Crybabies.
Call them crybabies, bro.
I'm not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now.
I can't give a guarantee of the future, especially when things are going the way they are.
Subtext.
Especially if things are going the way they are, there will be a revolution in this country, I can tell you now.
Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to play you a video where Joe Rogan was being told that, he repeated what was conspiracy theory when he was talking about the bad things that were happening in South Africa as well. And this was about 6 years ago. And unfortunately, these days you are a conspiracy theorist until time proves you right. So Joe Rogan has been proven right about what was happening in South Africa. Take a look at it.
Well, I know Lauren was referenced in a lot of the discussions that I was having with people on Twitter about people in South Africa who are farmers getting murdered.
Right. She had a documentary called Farmlands that she made.
Yeah. That was a weird one where people were getting angry at me and saying that I was reciting a racist conspiracy theory. I'm like, okay. But this is a racist conspiracy theory that a black person was talking about in front of Congress. I mean, this is a black African guy talking about it on television in Africa, the problems with farm murders. And then there was that guy who was the one who wants reparations, who's in South Africa, who's a very controversial character, he was kicked out of one of their organizations for...
He's talking about Julius Malema.
Doing a song singing about kill the Boer.
Yes.
He's doing it and making gun sounds, and the audience is cheering along with this song with gun sounds, and it's about killing farmers.
The term conspiracy theory is a tactic that the press and people use to shut down conversation. If you think about it, Harvey Weinstein was a conspiracy theory. Bill Cosby was a conspiracy theory. Kevin Spacey was a conspiracy theory. Everyone knew. Everyone.
Yeah, a lot of conspiracy theories.
And everyone kept their mouth shut.
Yeah.
So the idea that a conspiracy theory is inherently false is itself inherently false. And it's just a way to stigmatize a school of thought or an idea that you don't want to talk about.
Well, it's also labeling it as a racist ideology.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, you're immediately and they also, it was because of Trump reciting it. Trump had repeated it on television, talking about something in terms of the issue with South African farmers. But it's one of those things that we were talking about before, where even if they know that the narrative is not true, it supports what they're trying to push, and so they run with it. And so I
same the other way.
I kept doubling down. I kept posting all these different things about it. I was like, well, what about this guy talking about it? What about this? What about here's some instances of these murders? And then there's also the reality of South Africa in general, which is extremely violent. There's a lot of violence and there's a lot of crime. And some of it has to do with the fact
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to pause it so that we don't get copyright strikes. But he's mentioning the truth. I mean, it's crazy what is happening in South Africa, man. We have a lot of crime. We have a lot of racism, especially a lot coming from us, black people, directed towards minorities. Crazy stuff.
These people that are in these farms are targets because they're out in the middle of nowhere. And whether or not it's racist that they're going after them because they're white, that's debatable. But black farmers are also getting attacked. It's not simply just white farmers. There is some of that, though.
But and
there's some of that. There's some of them are going after these farmers because they're white.
And the thing that's really disturbing is, are people happier if this is black people killing other black people, like the Hutu and the Tutsis? That was a big genocide.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's a problem when people are being killed regardless of their race.
Right.
And tribalism cuts across racial lines.
But on the other side, there was also some legitimate claims to land that was stolen during apartheid. And that the people who are alive today, who might not have been around during the stealing of that land, are benefiting from the fact that they're living on stolen land. Like, that's all legitimate as well. So there's legitimate arguments in terms of like how the land was procured in the first place and how the person who's owning it today, how they came to own it. So it's complex. It's very complex. But
just to throw in a little bit of my 2 cents there, what Joe Rogan is not aware of is that it is true that, you know, white farmers own majority of productively agricultural land. But white people in South Africa do not own majority of the land. Majority of the land is actually in the hands of the Ngwenyama Trust and the KZN and the South African government. So those are two entities that own majority of the land. The white people in South Africa own majority of agricultural productive land. So those are two different things, two different concepts.
But it also has to do with this culture of violence in Africa in general,
right?
Especially particularly in South Africa, where there's a lot of poverty, and you know, these people who are out in these farms in the middle of nowhere,
boonies,
they're targets.
People don't. What politics from both sides wants to teach us is that things are never complex.
Right.
So if you have your little package and something doesn't fit in that package, you don't know what to make of it, so you want to dismiss it.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to have to do the work of reconsidering your assumptions.
And certainly don't discuss it publicly where you could be misconstrued or labeled as a racist.
Right.
And I was looking at all these people.
Or as somebody that's spreading misinformation or disinformation. Crazy stuff. Now they're trying to censor us in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, bad things are happening.
Labeling me as a racist. I was like, okay, I see what you're doing, but I'm just going to keep posting these things because this is all, what I'm saying is all being substantiated by a bunch of different people who are also black in South Africa. Like this is a lot of what this discussion revolves around.
Well, and what Trump's done is have that word lose a lot of its meaning. Because like if you just throw that term around willy-nilly, then at a certain point it's like, okay, it's the boy who cried wolf.
Right.
And the term is a very broad term. It's someone's grandma's prejudiced and says, I don't want my grandkids, dating a black person. That's not the same as advocating genocide. And they're both racist, but you can't regard them as synonymous. And one doesn't necessarily lead to the other.
Yeah, it's the fact that racism, I think that racism is probably diminished somewhat. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to go into a lot of racism talk over there, but in a nutshell, that is what's up. Americans just reacting and having views about what has happened in South Africa, what has been, brawling for a very long time. Apparently now the world is seeing. The eyes of the international community are finally setting on South Africa, and people have got to account. Now, I know that Ramaphosa and Ronald Lamola are going to meet with President Trump next week, and I'm just interested to see what will be discussed. I wish the whole thing becomes televised so that we sit on here, we chow our popcorn, and we just react, because we know they're gonna get cooked. Zelensky is going to be there. Hopefully Elon is there, but I know that his term as the Doge head is finished. I think he was closing off everything last week, if I'm not mistaken. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this one, please hit the sub, hit the like, open those notifications so that you are notified every time I upload a new video. Ladies and gentlemen, your boys are here.